Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Israel Joseph I, the founder, director, dean, and professor here at Sevenaria University. I want to welcome you guys back and say thanks for coming back and checking me out here with my whiteboard, teaching some lessons. So tonight we're going to talk about Mars in retrograde. It's a fifth lesson, and we're going to tackle a subject that's coming up because on October 31st of this year, Mars will begin its cycle backwards, or we will begin to proceed forward in front of Mars. So it's a pretty important event because, as you know, each planet contains a certain amount of gravity, and gravitational waves emanate from these planets, and they do affect us. And I'm not going to talk about the effect on each and every sign tonight. Definitely not. That's another show. What I will do tonight, though, is I'll talk about the general effect that I believe, from my point of view, historically speaking, that the planet Mars and possibly the other planets such as Uranus and other planets are having on us psychologically as a species. Also the animals as well, all living things. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk about some planets have power and the the human psyche. Okay. We're also going to talk, if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and grab my notes here. A little bit out of sorts, as to be expected. So let me go ahead and begin. So Mars is in what's called retrograde. So what does the word retrograde actually mean? Let's talk about that. Okay, this word is pretty obvious, I guess. Retro, you know what that means. Everyone uses that in society because when a fashion or a thing or an idea has returned, which every approximately 25 to 35 years, things cycle back around, the past becomes new again, and so it goes and it goes and it goes. For instance, when I was younger, you know, back in the 80s and so whatever, the 60s were popular, you know, and on and on and on. The 90s, the 70s got popular. Right now, the 80s are popular. So retro literally means, in one sense, now the dictionary will give you many senses of the word. Of course, I'm not here to tell you the dictionary meaning, the etymological background of this word. I'm just here to tell you the basic sense of retro is to move backwards. And grade indicates not, well, you know, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4 as far as grade, but it indicates more grade, like grade level, you know, like a grade as opposed to a grade level, excuse me. But a gradient, okay, this is called a gradient. So a vehicle would pass and go along or come down this gradient. And that's what the grade is in this. That's according to me, according to Sevenaria. Okay. Mars in retrogradient. Okay, got it? So that's what the big word means. Retrograde. Interesting word. What does it mean that planets go into retrograde? How is this possible? Well, let's establish some things here. Okay, you mind if I put this notes down for a minute? I'm just going to stack them there. Okay. You know, we all revolve around the sun. Everybody knows that the sun is where we revolve around. Okay? He's in the middle. Okay? Auspicious one. And all the other planets, now I know this is you know, a bit trivial, but you know, we revolve at least around this body here. So there's a good many of them, of course, and they're all in their own little circular thing around the big guy, right? We all know this from science class. They have their, it's called circular orbits, okay? And they have these circular orbits. Now, one of these planets is Earth, and that'll be this one right here, right? That's this one. So Earth is sitting here. I enlarged it a little bit. Earth is really small, but I want to make a point. And Earth has its own gravity. That's why we're, on the planet here, say being this is the ocean and the bottom of the, can't draw the whole circle, but on the planet, we're stuck, right? We can't move. We are, in a Sevenaria definition, would be magnetized to the planet. But science would say, oh, that's gravity. Well, we say it's because there are lodestones in the planet, and there are lodestones in our system. You see? And these lodestones match. Now that's what I'm talking about, lodestones. They're not only lodestones in these Earth. Someone asked me to write in block letters on YouTube. They said, why don't you write in block letters? Kids can't read script anymore. And I wanted to cry, really wanted to cry. Because, script is something that we learned. And I like writing a script. It's very fast. But I will do, that's the importance of script. It's quick. You can think quickly with script. But I will do my best to write more or less in block letters when I can. So Earth is here. And there are lodestones. You know what a lodestone is? A lodestone is a magnet. It's a magnet. But it's before it is a magnet. You can see there's a magnet here. But before it has become this material, it is in the form of a rock, a stone, a literal rock. And this rock is magnetized. You can stick stuff to it. It usually has a metallic ring if you hit it with a metal stick. Or a tool, a metal tool. And these are called lodestones by the Greeks. Lodestones, because they're loaded. But the word load, L-O-D-E, has a different connotation. It's not like a loaded gun. It's load, L-O-E-D, which means there's a cosmic interaction. And that's, again, what we're talking about. This cosmic lead down. So back to this now, we're talking about lodestones in the planet, and we're on the planet with the lodestones because the lodestones are affecting our, what is called gravity. Now science might be pulling their hair out right now going, it's real. But I'm saying the same thing you are, right? I'm just giving you a reason for the gravity. And I'm telling you that, excuse me, that was a ruler. An unruly ruler, which we are unfortunately surrounded by. So what I'm telling you is that on each one of these planets, you can already guess where I'm going with this. There are lodestones or lodestone type quality material that is having a magnetic gravitational effect, not only on itself and its neighbors, but on the Earth. Okay, now there is the magnetosphere, okay, but some of these light energies, when they pass to the Earth, they transform from a wave into particles. And science knows this. And wave-like motion usually means that there is no beginning or end to these waves, except where they eventually began. Well, there is a beginning. But that usually means there's a uniformity in its movement without a break into these particles. And this would indicate that there's some sort of continuous information being brought with it, right? Because it has to multiply itself. It cannot just fade here. It has to multiply itself. It has to keep going. And as it keeps going, then it can't go anymore because it has reached for instance, the ionosphere or the magnetosphere. I think it's the ionosphere. And breaks up into particles of light, which we experience as light. And we know, okay, that it's not just light. There's a gravitational property to it, a drawing into itself along with these crystallized pieces of information that eventually make their way to us. Okay? They make their way to us. Now, what do we think's happening with this crystallized pieces of information from these orbs that are making their way to us? What do we think's happening here? We think nothing's happening? Something's happening. Something is definitely happening when all of this is going down. And that's what we're here to talk about. This event and how people in the past recognized it and understood what was happening here. Gravitational forces and light. Gravity and light are affecting our minds. Okay, we are affected. Gravity and light are affecting our minds. And this is proven because we are 75% salt water. We're 75% seawater. People know this. We know this. We know this. Everyone drinks water all day. We know this. The moon, we know. I'm going to get rid of some of our particles here so we can have a little room and maybe draw a little smaller moon of Endor. The moon, we know here, right, changes the way the tides are against the land. We know this. On a full moon, the tides are out. On a half moon, the tides are in. I believe that's the way it works. Could be the other way around, but there's an effect. This is salt water. Salt water. We are 75% salt water. Therefore, if this is having an effect here, it is logical to conclude that this is also having an effect there. Now, I know there's a lot of lines going on, but I'm trying to create an image here that shows you that what we're talking about are these orbs having an effect on our minds. And the psyche of the entire human race. That's what we're talking about. The effect that these gravitational fields turning into particles then into particles are having on our minds. Just as the moon affects the salt water, it is affecting the salt water within. Because it is stirring the photons within. The photons are a part of this stream. These particles are photons that are containing information and they're coming for you. All from these worlds. Here, I'm going to start some jumpy markers here. I got to start drawing in different colors because you got to really see this, right? There we go. There's a world there. These worlds are sending vibrational energies to you as a person. And this is the first thing we have to understand. The dichotomy between you, the individual, you, the society, and these orbs projecting all of this stuff at you. Okay? And that's happening. Okay? So I hope I've explained that part of it, at least that it's clear that these planets, scientifically speaking, whether you're speaking about particles, waves, or light, whatever you're talking about, particles, waves, and Higgs, boson, okay? It's all light. It's all right. It's all light. We are this light. Okay, all right, but that's getting too ahead of the field. So we processed that these planets are sending signals to us. Mars is in retrograde. Let's talk about Mars. And who is Mars? And what is Mars? In fact, we're gonna get rid of this because you know what we've talked about. The planets have power. We understand the planets have power. We're gonna move on, okay? Because you know what? Rewind the video if you don't understand what I'm talking about. Mars. There we go. There's my bad non-script. Who knows? What is the planet Mars? Well, let's talk about it. Mars has an ancient history. First of all, where is Mars? Mars is I believe it's the next planet out from us. Mars is approximately 71 million miles away from us. So 71 mile, okay? 71 million miles away. And, you know, that's pretty much, Mars is a planet they have explored. We've landed there. You know, it's so far a desert world. It looks pretty like a desert. But you know, parts of this world look like a desert. And you go to other places and they look quite different. Now, we've supposedly seen the entirety of this planet via telescopes. But, you know, up close things can look a lot different. And I guess that's why they're there, if they are there at all. I always often wonder about the Van Allen belt. How are they getting past this? But hey, Van Allen belt of radiation, but whatever, it is whatever. It's a whole other conversation. So let's move on. So Mars. So let's talk about Mars in history. So it's interesting, the Greeks, we talk about the Greeks, had Mars, observed Mars. And there was kind of a war. Okay, we're going to talk about the gods as well. That's it. Because we want to talk about what's up with the gods. What's up with the demiurge, as they were called. And you could, the demiurge, we get the word urge, demi meaning half. What's up with these powerful beings? Well, before I begin reading, I guess I can just talk a little bit about it, because I'm a little bit versed in it. So, in the beginning of this whole deal with the gods were people who were really inquisitive about our world. And I know you'll say, but there were aliens and they came from other planets and enlightened the people, or there was a god that appeared and made a man and suddenly everything was great. Well, all of those things are very valid to say. But I'm going to start in a little different place. So in the beginning, people were quite inquisitive about our world. They observed, firstly, the day and the night. So day and night, right? And this was one of the first things they observed, because the day was great. And why would you say the day was great? Because you could obviously see in the daytime. Before there was fire, right? Before there was fire, you couldn't, before people really harnessed fire, night was frightening. Day was a great place to be. You could hunt, you could farm, you could teach, you could learn, you could relax in the sun. Obviously, I don't have to waste time going through why day would be great. And conversely, I don't have to waste time going through why night would be frightening. But I'll tell you this, we don't really have an idea here in the cities why night would be frightening. These people would have to face animals at night that came out, like wild animals. And we're talking about from Europe to Africa to Asia to South America. There are wild animals all over these countries that come out at night and hunt you and take your village children and all that stuff. It's horrible, right? So night was a fright. Right? Night was a fright. So this simple understanding led to a kind of yin yang thing, whereas that there was darkness, right? Here we'll make some darkness, and there was the light as well, right? That's what this really this understanding really came out to be, that there was darkness and there was light, and that the darkness would eventually lead to light, but that the big light would fade into the darkness again. So I know this is an Asian motif, but the idea is that in the day, the sun is seen. At night, the moon is seen. So it represents the sun, and the moon. I'm sorry, I should be on the other side, shouldn't I? Okay, so this would be the moon, and this would be the sun. You see how that works? This also represents the sun, and the sun in winter, when it is hardly ever seen except very low on the horizon. And if you look, if you're looking south, the sun is rising this way, it goes back down. When in the summertime, it really rises up north above your head. Okay? So this complex began to be the idea that day was good and night was bad. Day was good, night was bad. Summer, winter. So they started developing what Sevenaria will call a summer-winter god. A summer-winter god. Which meant that nature, the creator, okay, because they also observed that there was order, right? There's order here. You see what I mean? There's order. To get this done, it has to go in a circle. It can't be out of order. So they noticed there's an order, a symphony, and they called it God, good. Like here, except, this is known as God. Okay, that's God. This is also God, but a different type of God, like a winter God, a cold, harsh God. So this then became let's just go right to the Abrahamic religions, because we can then I want you to perceive this as being the vast majority of the religions on the earth, with an exception of a few. This then became the Almighty God, the AG. Yo, it's the AG. This then became the devil. It's not just the summer winter thing, it's the psychological effect. The psychological effect on the human mind that this has, and the psychological effect that this has. We know that winter has a really tough psychological effect on human beings. Up in Alaska, for instance, some people, very small majority of people, don't do so well in the long winter months and end their lives. People have a great time in the summer, enjoying the warm weather, and then the reverse is the same as well. So human beings are mysterious people. So all right, back to this. So we're talking about the AG and the devil, right? The Almighty God and the devil. So this is really what we're seeing here. But what we're really going after here is the effects, the psychological effects of these of the light. Because what we're talking about here is light. I mean, you have to be able to see this in order to move on. This is a difference between light, dim light, bright. Now I know it's on it's on the wrong side. Okay, I should have done that on the other side. And then bright. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here: dim light and bright light. Okay, and the effects that this has on the human mind, the psychological effect. You have to establish that. That's what we're getting at. So let me erase this now. So then the light is affecting us, and they realized that. Now they looked at winter and summer and said, "Wow, that's, like today we would be like, that is a trip." You know what I mean? Like figuring all that out, man. We really figured some stuff out. And they must have gave themselves some high fives and like, yeah, we figured some stuff out. Very cool. But then someone stood up and said, yeah, that's cool. But what about the effect that the moon is having on the earth? Because I noticed that when it's a sickle moon, the water is in more. And when it's a full moon, the water is out more. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. Then the shoreline is bigger. But I also noticed that the fish are jumping more when it's a full moon and they jump less. What about the effects these are having here? And the other guys must have said, oh, you're right. What about the moon's effect on people? How is that having an effect on us? Is it having an effect? And on which hemisphere of the brain? They didn't even know that back then, but you know what I mean? Like, you got to wonder today. And they decided, yes, of course. Even back then, they knew we were water. We are light. Yes, we are light. But the way light coalesces the molecules, some of it is water on this planet. And we are 75% water. And they said there must be a correlation between the water and the moon and the water in you. There must be a correlation between this. There's got to be. And so they said about quantifying this correlation. And someone said, well, it's not just the moon and it's not just water, because it's light affecting us too, the winter and the summer and the depression and the happiness and the blah, 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 blah. What about that? Of course, it's affecting us as well. And they agreed, yes, that's. And then they turned to the obvious one, being the star of the show. Okay, we know him as the sun. And they said, what about the sun? And they said, well, that is the ultimate effector of man. Definitely the effector of people, ultimately by light, heat, magnetism, and energy. And possibly information. And so this was agreed upon. These two things, the sun and the moon, okay, the gods, the sun and the moon, definitely some kind of God. And it's true if you look in your scriptures in Genesis chapter 1, verse 16, chapter 1, verse 18, they were left in charge. I've explained this in other Sevenaria videos before that the sun and the moon are the Marshala, the Marshal, the Oeth, are the stars we oweth, they are for signs, they are for seasons. And the sun and moon left to rule the day, and rule is the Mashallah, rule the day and to rule the night. Okay, so they're rulers. The ancients realized they were rulers, and the ancients had a revelation. They wanted to know the effects. They wanted to know the effects. And this is where I think religion and astrology and alchemy and spirituality, this is where it all goes crazy. Once they start here with this effect stuff, because you see, there's some who really want to quantify the effects, which means to really study them and to really mark them down. And there's some who just want to observe the big picture. Then there's some who don't care. Then there's some who can be made to care. Okay. And then there's some who don't know. And you can't tell whether they'll be made to care or not. So the effects are where we always get wrong. Now, what I'm suggesting is that, well, let me tell you where these guys went a little further. So these ancient people, men and women, decided that the moon and the sun definitely had an effect on us. And then they went a little further. But what about the other planets? And all they could see were 5 other planets. Okay? So there were 5 other planets, okay? And then the sun and the moon. So that makes 7. And that's, Sevenaria, right? So the number 7 is very important. You can see right away why we have 7 days of the week, on and on, all the 7s. Look it up on Google. I don't have to waste your time telling you every single 7 there is, because you can see that 7 is the first 7 planets that were visible to the human eye. Keep that in mind. I know people are pulling their hair out, going, there's more than 7 planets. But this is what you can see. And I know the sun is not a planet. They're saying, oh, the sun isn't a planet. But let's call them orbs. This is a really important word, okay? The orbs. The first 7 orbs they could see was the sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Really should have gone the other way. And so these were the ones they dealt with. And they decided that each one of these had an effect. I mean, I don't have to tell you. You can already guess the story. They knew that each one of these has an effect on us. And so they started quantifying the effects. They started quantifying the effects of these planets. Venus has one effect on us. Mercury another, Mars another, Jupiter another, and Saturn another. And they assigned qualities to these effects because they quantified them so well that they were able to literally mark down the effects of these planets on men and women because of their birth date and lodestones that we talked about. In these worlds connected to you as a human being in your system and the arrangement of your lodestones on the date of your birth. Okay, so this is how they establish the gods. Okay, they establish the gods by understanding that the planets were obviously created by a creator, because they are they are working according to order, and nothing works according to order unless it is created by a divine entity or an entity, one of us. This whiteboard wouldn't be here unless someone created it. This camera wouldn't be working. The planets wouldn't be there unless they were made. Everything that is made has a maker. So the idea that the planets had effects is basically, I forgot what I was going to write there, but basically that's what they're talking about. So what effects does Mars is attributed to Mars? Well, I showed you 7 visible worlds, but in true, every now and then there's 8 to the ancient eye, right? Every now and then the ancient eye saw 8 worlds. They saw another one called Uranus. Sorry, I forget sometimes how to even write in block letters. So Uranus is the furthest most planet you can see. So you have these 5, and then you have the Earth and the Sun and the Moon, and sometimes they saw this distant, once in a while planet that they called Uranus, right? And this here is the 8th, right? And Uranus in the Greek, so Uranus in the Greek is heaven. It's okay. Now, somewhere along the line, I know a lot of you are looking at these words and seeing other words in them. Of course, this has been a long time joke. I pronounce this word Uranus. Some people say Uranus. Some people say Uranus. I say Uranus. I put the accent on the Ur. Somewhere along the line, someone decided to name the most obscene body parts by the end of this planet, but we know that, and I'm just going to head that joke off before it's made, but I'm sure it will be made. But anyway, Uranus in Greek actually means heaven, and that is because they saw this 8th world here. Every now and then they would see this 8th world, and they called it Uranus, heaven. And they would see this 8th world, and they understood that somewhere along the line in the past, this 8th world was usurped by a sort of Oort cloud, for lack of a better term. I know it's not the Oort cloud, but a cloud that was stopping their visibility of the planet. And the one before this one was Saturn, okay? And then the one after this one is the one we're talking about now, is Mars. Okay, so what happened here? We're talking about Mars, but we're talking about the gods. the Greeks looked at this as the works of the gods, and so did all the other cultures, Hindus, the Egyptians, even maybe the Hebrews as well, because they deal with 12s and 7s. So they looked at this as the working of the gods, and so the voice of the god, and sort of in place of the god, and so it was a god. So this is Saturn, the god, Uranus, this is Mars, and Saturn is who. All right, let me tell you the history of Saturn before we get to Mars here. Saturn, cut off by its orbit, it chose a new orbit. I am saying this from Sevenaria, that the reason they said Saturn, let me start again. In the history of the gods, there's a story that involves Saturn and Uranus as people, right? And in this story, okay, now follow me. In this ancient story, Uranus is married to Gaia. Uranus is married to Gaia. Why is that? Again, we're talking about light and magnetism. And this light and magnetism was beneficial for the earth. This is the way the story goes. And so it was said that this beneficial light was life-giving on the planet, and that this was the actual Uranus, the heaven. They turned, this is how we get into the gods now. The ancient cultures started trying to wrap these very complicated stories up, as we talked about in other videos, into the people, into like you and I. And they said that Uranus was a god, a king. He was a great king. And he was married to Gaia, and she was also a great queen. And they were married together, and they had a son named Saturn. Well, somewhere along the line, Saturn fought with Uranus. Now, there's Greek names for this, okay? But Saturn fought with Uranus and castrated Uranus. You hear what I'm saying? You know, we are introduced to this one as Satan in today's. So understand the root of this, that Saturn, the planet, is said to have castrated Uranus, his father. I am saying at Sevenaria that Saturn changed its orbit. And this means that we could hardly perceive there was an orbital shift in Saturn. And because of that, Uranus began turning backwards from all the other planets. They turned it into gods. Mars is the god of war. He is, I'm sorry, there's a planet missing here, isn't there? There's Jupiter. Sorry about that. Jupiter is Zeus, or Jah. We know this god as Satan. All right. This is the planetary version, not the man version. They give you this version, but I'm telling you the planetary system. This is the planetary Jah, the planetary Satan, planetary Jah. Planetary Jupiter, Jah. So Mars comes along, and we're going to read a little bit about who Mars is. So we have an idea that why today, until today, we're still mad at Saturn, because Saturn cut off heaven. Satan cut off heaven, cut off the mother and the father were separated. Heaven could no longer provide its seed to the earth to replenish it because of Saturn's movement. And so Saturn becomes Satan, and the heavens is unreachable because Satan will start. You see all the change in a word can change everything. But Jupiter, who is Zeus, destroys Satan, who is Kronos. We know him as Kronos, and we know what happened between Jupiter and Kronos. I'll tell you the story real quick before we go on. Because Satan castrated Uranus, Gaia, who was the husband of Uranus and father of Saturn, and mother of Saturn, became extremely mad. And she conspired to, since Kronos, Saturn, was destroying all of his children by eating them, meaning cosmologically that it was eating the moons around itself for a while as it was changing its orbit. It was eating all its children. One of the moons was obviously Jupiter, which is now a gas giant, but it obviously was a moon of Saturn, which was saved by Gaia because of the story goes that she fed Saturn a rock instead of the child, and Saturn took the rock. So it was obviously a meteorite, right? A meteorite. So she fed Saturn the rock, and then the child was saved by her because she put it someplace into a river. And just like Moses, it was found in a river by some shepherds, and it was raised. So this is celestial. So it's Jupiter. It turns into be Jupiter or Zeus. And then he defeats his dad Saturn by blocking Saturn. You understand? He blocks Saturn. You see how that works? Okay. So now we're going to read about Mars, who is called the god of war, right? So after Jupiter, Mars was the most important of the Roman deities. And by the way, I'm reading from World Mythology by Larousse. It's one of the books here in the Sevenaria Library. It's a great book. I often make photocopies, but this is Larousse. Okay, great book. Got a lot of beautiful images. Okay. It's full of information, though. Okay, and accurate information. So let's read. Mars. Okay, after Jupiter, Mars was the most important of the Roman deities, and he was worshipped throughout central and southern Italy. As a god of war, many of his festivals were held in the spring, the beginning of the campaigning season, meaning the war season. And so his name was given to the first month of the Roman year. Okay. So Mars was a pretty important person. Given his name was the first month of the Roman year, which is what we just read. But he was also obviously right here from the beginning the god of war. In one of the temples of Mars, in the heart of the city, were kept the sacred spears and shields of Mars. On the outbreak of war, the council had to shake these spears and say, Mars Vigilia, with an exclamation point. Mars, wake up. If the spears moved by themselves, this was a bad omen. In March and October, the beginning of the and end of the campaigning season, the spears were carried in procession by his priests, who performed war dances. One of his special festivals involved a horse race and the sacrifice of one of the horses, whose head was cut off and decorated with cakes. That must have been quite a sight. His sacred animals were the wolf and the woodpecker, and various plants. For example, the fig tree and the laurel were associated with him as well. So we're talking about the wolf and the woodpecker. So when you see the wolf, a lot of times symbolically, you're looking at Mars. You're looking at the god of war. When you see the woodpecker, maybe Woody Woodpecker, you see, looking at Mars. You're looking at that god, that playful god that will come and knock on your door, knock on your soul, and mess with you, and get you to do things you might not ordinarily do, make you really angry. See, Woody Woodpecker. We never know how it's brought to us in this time. Mars seems to also have been an agricultural god, the protector of fields not only in times of war but against disease and unfavorable weather. Mars held a special place in the Roman pantheon, partly as the father of Romulus, and partly because of the importance of military achievement in the Republic of Rome and the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire literally credited Mars with military achievements. So war. Right? Okay. So he's God of war, God of military achievement for Rome. And we will see why Rome holds this God in such great regard. Now this is just history. I'm just telling you stuff. You can make what you need to make about this history. So we're going to read on page 182 of World Mythology by Larousse, which is one of my favorites. Legends in history, when Livy or Levi produced an amount of the earliest, when Levi produced an account of the earliest Roman times, he admitted that the events that he retraced seemed more like legends than historical facts. This and other early histories do in fact bear the imprint of the magical, and many episodes undeniably reflect the strong influence of folklore. So the legend of Rome's founder Romulus begins like a folk story. A beautiful princess had been imprisoned by her uncle, a usurper, lest she might provide the senior branch of the family with her heir, the crown, by her right belonged to it. The girl, however, gave birth to a child in spite of his precautions, her uncle's precautions, and under the most mysterious conditions, her seducer was said to be none other than the god Mars. So I'll read that again. Romulus, the legend of Rome's founder, Romulus, begins like a folk story. A beautiful princess had been imprisoned by her uncle, he really wanted to impregnate her, but she obviously refused, and one day woke up pregnant, and no one could figure out who impregnated her. And quite like the story in the Bible, she was, or in Krishna's mother, or many other birth stories, she was magically impregnated, I would say, by the light, but in this case, she credited it to Mars. So let's go on reading. So the girl gave birth to a child in spite of his precautions and under the most mysterious conditions. Her seducer was said to be none other than the god Mars. When the uncle learned that the princess had given birth to twins, he hastened in order that they should be abandoned in open country to be devoured by wild animals or to perish in cold and hunger. But his orders were disobeyed, and the infants left in a basket on the floodwaters of the Tiber, where they were miraculously saved. Their frail craft was washed up at the foot of the Palatine, and as the water receded, a she-wolf, a female wolf, the animal sacred to Mars, a wolf came up out of the thickets and lay down beside the two children, warmed them, and fed them on her own milk. So uh, Romulus was fed by the milk of a she-wolf. This is known, right? He was raised by wolves, literally, as the joke goes. But not quite, because we have the impression that they lived in a cave with the wolf. They were just fed that day, according to the original story, because she warmed them and fed them on her own milk. When a shepherd came by, the beast departed, her mission accomplished. The astonished shepherd took the infants home and handed them over to his wife for care. So his wife raised these kids. Okay, so let's talk about what Mars meant, I guess, to the Gaelic by this account. So Mars was again the god of war, but it's impossible to say whether he was the only Gaelic god of war. It is probable that each small Gaelic tribe had its own god of war, and when they were assimilated, all of these deities were given the name of Mars without further discrimination. However, original names survived, but merely as surnames. This accounts for the very many epithets, at least 64, that have adhered to the name of the Gallo-Roman Mars. There is a Mars Titiritus, which is the one defined by Lucan, a Mars Sogomo victorious in the valley of the Rhone and in Burgundy, whose cult reappears in Munster in Ireland, whose name occurs again in that of the Irish hero Nia Sagamain, champion of Sergamo. There is a Mars Belladon, or Belatu Cardros, destroyer, among the Benetons, the Bretons, I'm sorry, that's literally Bretons, a Mars Camillus, powerful, and Mars associated with the god Camillus. In Ireland, Camel, father of the hero Finn, a Mars Redionus, the red, Redionus. This color being associated with the Celtic imagination, with the warlike activity and the world of the dead. I would suspect that it's also due to the planet's color. It's a ruddy colored planet, red planet. Elsewhere, there's a Mars Uranus, a Donitz, protector of citadels, and a Caturix, king of combats. So Mars, again from Rome, Mars, the god of war, equated with Ares. Neptune, the god of waters, identified with Poseidon and primordial life. So again, they're talking about Romulus, And there's a lot of information on Mars from Rome. A temple was built to Mars altar, the Avenger, divine ancestor of the Julian house. So a temple was built to Mars altar, the Avenger. So here's where we get into the Julian house. Okay, and the Julian Empire in Rome, of course, is unmistakable from the time of Christ, the Caesars. Okay, we get our names, two names that were from the German deities, Thor and Woden, who we get our Tew and Wednesday as well. Thursday and Wednesday are named after this. So, Mars in history, this is a historic, and most of that, granted, was Western history. But from a Western standpoint, and from a world standpoint, from lesser known sources, Mars has always been known as a god of war. In the Sidereal, he is also in the tropical, and these are your zodiacs. Okay, so this planet is known to be a god of war. Sevenaria will say that doesn't necessarily mean it is a god of war, direct war. It could be a mitigator of war as opposed to direct war, but it is a god of war. Now, right now, this planet, this god of war, historically, okay, and we'll be talking more about this as we go on, has been affecting Rome and the last 2,000 years of history. And we can see the psychological effect that has had on the entire planet. Has been affected by Mars, Christianity. Paul's version is a Martian version. Christ is the sun, right? So we have two different types of the sun in Aquarius, managed by Uranus. And why do I say Paul is a Martian version? Well, we have 2,000 years of Paulian doctrine to show that this is a Martian version. This is war and duality. Christ, on the other hand, is all love, all light. So Mars is having an effect on our world historically for the last 2,000 years. And it's not just Rome, of course. I use this since this is the most outstanding. I don't want to pin it on anyone. So, we'll just say that But I use this because Rome has a relationship to the, Romulus is Rome. So I use Rome, but it can be all the world, see? All is Martian. It's Martian. I think that's the way you spell Martian. I'm sorry if I've spelled it wrong. So you can see what I'm getting at. The forces, these lodestones are affecting how people thought for 2,000 years, maybe more, because of Mars affecting everyone, including Christianity and Islam and on, Hinduism, the whole thing, all of Earth was affected by Mars, 2,000 years. Now Mars goes retrograde every 2 years. But this is the first it's gone in Aquarius. Okay? And so let's talk about what that means. Because the 2,000 years of Mars going direct and going retrograde has had an effect on the psyche of people. So I want to talk about what this means. You have to establish what you're talking about before you can just jump into it. That's why a lot of people say, oh, that's hocus pocus stuff. That's the stuff I don't believe, blah, blah, I don't believe. But I just established scientifically that these planets are having an effect on us. So let's see what the effect is going to be. Okay, so in the sky, the way we see the planets, we see them coming over our heads at night. You stand on the earth, that's you, and you're looking up and you see constellations. There's a horse, there's Aquarius, the man is pouring the water down, there's all these constellations. There's a Dipper, you know what I mean? There's a, Orion, right? There's all these constellations. There's Aquarius, right? I'm not going to draw, I drew Aquarius, I'm sorry. This is Aquarius here, right? So this is how we see them. But ancient man was, and there are also constellations below this too, and there are constellations above. But these are the ones we really see here in the northern hemisphere. And ancient people were clever because they divided them into sections. Well, actually, the universe is clever because it can be divided into sections, and all of these were 30 degrees. Right? And there's 12 of them, which equals 360. This is why you have 360 degrees in a circle, and there actually used to be 360 days in the year, but then they had to, adjust it for some time slippage here and there. We have 365. Okay. In front of these beauties that we see here are literally the planets. Okay, the 7 orbs we talked about. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, they only saw 5. The other one was the moon and the sun, so we don't need to include. So the 5. Okay, and they were somewhere in here shooting off that power we talked about, right? But they people wanted to know where they were because the signs themselves shut off power. So if the sign is putting off power and it's being refracted to the planet power down to you, then it was a whole bigger step now. Now they included the sidereal band of constellations because they understood light. This is all about light and the changing of light and the effect of light on the human psyche. Should I write that down? No. It is all about light and the changing of light and the effect on the human psyche. That's what this is all about. Light and the changing of light and the effect on the human psyche. That's what we're talking about. And Mars has a specific effect. We've already understood this. So let's change this constellations here to the correct ones I want to show you. So we have Gemini, right? I don't know what they look like, but they're two people, right? You know that they're two people, the twins. You know their sign is this. And then we have Taurus. This is Gem. Okay, can you read that? Gemini. And then you have Taurus. Taurus the bull. Okay. No, that's not Taurus the bull. My bad. Sorry, guys. That will be Taurus the bull. And so then what's happening is that Mars currently is in retrograde. So I'm going to show you what's happening with Mars now. Let's say Mars is here. Well, Mars, let's say Mars is here right now. Okay? And as the Earth spins every night and the planets come over every night and the constellations come over every night, I hope you're following me on this. We see Mars in Gemini. Gemini being the background constellation in the sidereal band. In this 30-degree arc section. This is really important to remember. In that 30-degree section, Mars. And because it was in Gemini, Gemini has a quality, its duality at its surface level, and that dualistic quality is shining through the god of war, and therefore the god of war has a dualistic effect on you. War, no war. Now this is just a Sevenaria version, and people may disagree, but this is what I'm teaching you. That the duality of Gemini affecting Mars produces in you this system. But now Mars is in retrograde. And what does retrograde mean? Going back. So we have the constellations, and now it has to travel backwards. Realistically, science will say that the Earth is speeding up and it is remaining in its orbit. What is that? We are speeding up or it's going back? That's two miraculous things. But for the sake of argument, we're going to say it's going back, and now it has crossed. So because it's going back, it's going this way. And it was in Gemini. So naturally, if it's going back in our vision, the next sign is Taurus. If it were going forward, it would be in the next sign, which I believe is Cancer. Cancer. But because it's going back, right, back, it's going to Gemini. So Mars is no longer here, right? Mars is no longer here. Mars is moved here now. Whoa. So now we're in a double trouble because we're having the duality of Gemini, and this is right now. This is October, say the 12th. Mars is here on this line. So we're still having the duality of Gemini, but we're having a problem because Mars is moving into Taurus the bull. And does anyone know what a bull acts like? It acts like you ever hear of a bull in a china shop? This is Taurus the bull. Very strong-willed, strong-minded situation here. And this constellation, strong, is going to be ruling Mars on October 31st. It begins its journey. And then November 15th, it will be in here. So we're looking at Mars in Taurus, the bull. And this is no bull. This is scientific stuff that's happening. Mars in Taurus, the bull, is literally happening scientifically, astronomically, not just astrologically. So Mars in Taurus, the bull, can mean trouble. Why on earth would Mars in Taurus, the bull, mean trouble? Well, let's look at Taurus, the bull. Again, this is a bull. This is a direct creature. Let's look at Mars. Mars is god of war, combined with direct. We're going to be experiencing this from November 15th until January. Let me grab my notes, make sure I'm on the up and up with the dates here. 13th of 2023. December, that's 2 months. That's not that bad. But the world better not blow itself up in 2 months. In 2 months, all the war we see all over the television could rage because Mars is now drifted back into Taurus and is powering the minds of the people on the planet in possibly the wrong positions and could cause complete devastation. So we're looking at a situation where Mars could up the levels of war. Is that possible? What about personal stuff? Relationships. Mental health. Your job. Your boss. Your child. How are you going to ready yourself for the effect that this planet could possibly be having unknown to you? How are you going to ready yourself for that? Is there a way to get ready for the effect that Mars in Taurus? Is there a way to get ready for all this? And what I'm going to say is yes, there is a way to get ready for all of this. And we're going to talk about all of that, okay? So Mars is going to up the level of animosity and anger and war you feel in the next couple months. Winter is going to be tough. You can see it on the world stage. Just turn on the television and you'll see what's happening, and it won't be pretty. That's going to happen, what I'm saying, in an interpersonal relationship as well, in an interpersonal way. Also on your inside with depression, mental health, okay? These different factors are going to be really important. Personal stuff's going to feel really crazy. Now, I am going to say that this is not going to affect each 100% of the people. This is definitely not going to affect 100% of the people. Some people will not even be in tune to this or feel it or understand its meanings when they do feel it, okay? But the people who are going to be in tune and affected by it and feel it, they're going to know it, okay? So, but to some it will be unknown, okay? So what can we do about this? Well, let's understand the principle that's at work here, okay? So I don't know if I want to really erase all of that. So we'll give myself a little space over here. So the principle at work with Mars and all the other planets that surround us is light. Light. Okay? That's the principle at work. And reflection and refraction of light. How we reflect and refract this light is what's going on. You on the inside, when you're a sperm, before you're a sperm, you're a particle of light. As a sperm, your 23 chromosomes went into your mom, 23 chrome, right, equals 46. These 46 with your particle used these 46 to build a body, an increasingly bigger and bigger body. But it remained light, and this structure The structure of that's horrible, but the brain and the spinal cord, there's the pineal gland in the brain, which contains this light. Mars is affecting this. So are all the other planets. This pineal gland, okay? You have your brain, and you have the center of your brain, and there's a gland in the center of the brain. Mars is affecting that. So what can you do to help yourself with all of that? Well, what we're talking about is, first of all, conscious awareness. We're talking about conscious awareness. Being conscious that Mars is going in Taurus is going to up the levels of personal stuff, of war, of relationships, mental health, job stuff, your children, and to be calm this winter. For more reasons than you understand. For more reasons than you can possibly comprehend, because of this interaction with Mars and Taurus and the levels of radiation, magnetism, and gravitational forces, heat and light that are being distributed from this conjunction here is going to affect your pineal gland in absolutely unforeseen ways. We don't know what this winter might bring. It might bring docile behavior because of it's so horrid to think about what might happen, that we might retract all the way, and let's hope that happens. Or it could bring out the worst in us. So I am hoping that people would come to their senses about what's happening. Mars is moving back from Gemini to Taurus. It's moving back. And in Taurus, the bull, this ain't no bull. It's going to be shining down on Mars. Well, the scientists might now be ripping their hair out and saying this is not possible, since the planets are not really constellations, but are very far apart from each other if we were to look at them. But what we are talking about is particle, light, or light particle distribution. So requiring not the necessity of a constellation to be actually a bull, but the measure of light coming from this distribution, whatever it may actually be, presented to us as a bull in the sky, is what it is. And as we know, this section, this 30-degree section, is not a good section for purposes of having Mars there, the god of war. Taurus on its own is a very beneficial sign. All you Taurians out there, leaders, you know yourselves. But with Mars, that would be like throwing gasoline on a fire, if you will. So Mars steps in, and now we have, so I don't want to beat it to death. And boy, oh boy, does that look more like a rat than a bull, doesn't it? Where's my drawing skills? I used to have drawing skills, but I'm going fast. So Taurus shining its light down on Mars, shining its light down on you and me. We've got to be careful, because now I'm Aquarius, and I'm very methodical and very open and individualistic, but I'm empathetic and I love people, I love animals, and I love, but I'm very individualistic. This could have an effect on me. How? My temper. Temper. This is also temper. Temper. Cool heads have to prevail here. Birth personal, again, temper. Ment. Temperament. Mars is going to change your temperament. It's subtle. It's not going to come up and push you over. It's going to subtly massage you into thinking you want to smack that guy over the head with a club until he can't see. And you're not going to do it. So it's temperament. Okay, that's what it's all about. Your mental health, again, temperament. You have to rise. Okay, you have to rise above everything that comes your way. You're going to be called to rise. This is the era where you're going to be called to rise, because Mars is in Taurus, and you're going to need lots of temperament this winter for 2 months. It's just 2 months. But then again, a lot could happen in 2 months. Okay. So Mars is in retrograde. Going into Taurus. It's going to have an effect on our temperament. Okay. We are particles of light, so the light distribution is going to have an effect on our temperament. We could possibly get really mad and not like what's going on, but you got to rise up. And I'm going to talk a little bit about rising up. Okay, so we already understand what's happening here. So I can go ahead and erase all of this sidereal band and talk about something very special. I'm not going to have to write all this down. Sitting in silence in a dark room is recommended in the New Testament. It's recommended in most spiritual searches, sitting in a lightless room with no light. Tape up the windows if you have to. Close your eyes and you'll see that there's an internal light, okay? No light, no, dark room. Closed. Okay? Just the search alone for this in a dark room, which I can tell you that I have personally seen my light. I've seen the internal light in a completely dark place. I'll tell you, I've seen it many times. But one of the really most brilliant times is when I was recording with Fireburn, and I was sleeping in the studio, and it was inside of a building with no windows. And when the door was locked and lights were off, that was it. There were no lights. Even the hallway light went off, so there was nothing. And in that dark place, that light appeared, and it is a low-level light that looks like a mist on the ground, and there is one above as well. But the minute you try to look up at it, it goes away, but it remains somewhere else, and you can't really focus yourself on it. But it is in complete darkness, and it's a phenomenon that you should try and observe yourself. In fact, I need to do that more and get that kind of meditation more. But so internal light, but really just go into a dark room and close your eyes for 10 minutes a day. And what you want to do is you want to sit still. and breathe. And I know this may sound like a very conventional thing to do, but this is really the foundation of controlling most of what is coming at you. Why? Because sitting still allows your body to centralize itself, if you will, to balance itself. By sitting still, you are controlling the mind. The mind. The I am in you is controlling the mind. So sit still and let the I am control the mind. It's a good practice. Breath control is also another way of doing this, by proper breath control and researching breathing control. But connecting with this internal essence and getting to know who you are with this light that is in you and the essence of the light you were as you came in a particle, you came in a wave in the beginning, you ended up on Earth as a particle that gathered something around itself that made the semen there, and then you turned into an upright semen with a long hard tail called a spinal cord. You see how that worked out for you? And you've got a face, right? But you're really just that big that thing just turned a little bigger in the body. And so the light that was here is your pineal gland. It's still there. You're just walking upright now. You see, you were the one that made it. There were other seamen here. They didn't quite make it. Their light is particle, and when they died, they went back to the ultimate wave. You're in the wave, and then they come down again. And who doesn't make it goes back to, and this is where we go when we die. We are particles, so we go up here when we die to the ultimate wave. So, but while you're here, you look like this. So what you need to do is reconnect with the holiness, the purity of this light inside of you, which is going to be difficult to find because of the entirety of the whole Saturn and Mars run, last 2,000 years of Mars and Saturn running things. It's going to be hard to find that light because they've taught it out of us. But, Jesus said that if your light be single and if your eye be single, then your whole body is full of light. All right. Jesus really represented the light many times. So looking for that internal light, for that peace within, and the ability to center yourself when you're feeling crazy due to all of the negative effects that Mars is presenting. So it's in retrograde in Taurus. These particles of light, we're just going to sum this up now because I think we've pretty much brought this home about Mars. I just want to check my paperwork and make sure I haven't really forgotten anything. So basically what we're going to say is, Mars is in Taurus. It's basically sending this electricity and energy and light down the way all planets do, all day, all year, all of our lives. We are receiving this in our brain as a receptor. We are originally a light particle that is gathered through an electrical static electricity, the clothing of our bodies. And so we are in this thing. The brain is the overdeveloped original sperm, the spinal cord, the hardened sperm tail. And we are in here like a driver inside this thing. And I am driving right now my crane, my machine. This thing, however, because it is light, is affected by the original lights. It comes from the original lights. You understand how it works? So it comes from these original lights, and therefore it is still affected. So Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. So this spooky action at a distance is happening in us. I'm afraid Einstein either couldn't or wouldn't tell you that, or maybe he didn't think about it himself. But this spooky action at a distance is affecting you, it's affecting me, it's affecting all of us and how we think. Now, in the age of Aquarius, which is what I want to get into before I wrap this up, we're having the highest help of all of this. And I want to get into talking about what is the greatest help that we're receiving outside of the Creator, outside of the inspiration of the creative force in the universe, who the Rastas we like to call Jah Rastafari, but there's many names for this creator. There is not one name. What is really helping us is that the planet Uranus has moved into Aquarius. Uranus moved into Aquarius. And remember, Uranus is heaven. And who did it replace? Saturn. Satan. Who we call Satan. Who originally usurped, cut off Uranus from us. Remember, I told you that Uranus was helping the Earth, and Saturn, by its orbit, cut off Uranus. Cut off Uranus. Excuse me. So now that Uranus has moved into Aquarius, we can then expect an Aquarian effect. Okay? So we then have the constellation of Aquarius having an effect not on Saturn anymore, because Saturn's out the way now. And before it was having an effect with Saturn, in that Saturn is the one that cut off heaven. So Aquarius was feeding the Earth for 2,000, along with Mars, of course, for 2,000 years. Aquarius was feeding information to a usurper, and that usurper was feeding information to the Earth through its god of war, Mars. So Saturn fed Mars. Okay? And Saturn was skimming information from Aquarius. But now Saturn has moved out of the way, and we have Uranus. Moving in. Heaven, and Uranus is sun. It's not just heaven. There's also the translation that it's sun. So the sun is moving back into Aquarius. The son of man, the sun, right on time, in the year 2020, between 2012 and 2020. Right on time. We have the return of heaven into Aquarius, deposing the usurper and his helper. Deposed both of them. So Uranus is returned to Aquarius, and they deposed these guys. These guys are naturally not too happy about that. So we're having the situation where these guys are deposed, and they're having to find a new home. Okay? Aquarius is now it used to be the home of Saturn to Earth. Now it's no more Saturn, it's Uranus to Earth. Okay? So this is different. And Saturn's main dude, Mars, is now kicked back too. But he's in Taurus, like we spoke about. So that's what's happening. So basically, what we're talking about is from in about 15 days on October 31st, 2022, Mars will begin retrograde. Retrograding. It begins moving backwards. Starts its move. Okay? On November 15th, Mars in Taurus. Yeah, I knew. Sorry about that. Taurus. I'm sorry about that. Taurus. Sorry for Taurus. Yes, I spelled it right. I just had a brain loss for a minute. Okay, so October 31st, this stuff begins. The journey backwards begins. Mars starts heading back. The retrograding begins, and then November 15th, Mars ends up in Taurus. Next year, on Jan 13th, Mars goes direct, and in March, I think it's March, enters back into Gemini. Oh, it is. Goes back to Gemini. Kicks our butt for a little while and goes back to Gemini. Okay? So that's the meaning of all of this, of Mars. Mars going retrograde. Mars in Taurus going retrograde. It ups the levels of war on the planet. We can see that. But I have to tell you this. Okay? Because it's the particles of light, the particle distribution, making everybody really mad. So it's not cool. We can control it. That's why I'm telling you this. So you can control it. Personal stuff is going to go crazy. Depression, anger, anxiety, the whole thing. Temperament, relationships. If you don't want to end your marriage, don't fight this winter. Chill. If you don't want to rock your boat on your job or your mental health too, watch your mental health. No pill is going to save you from the powers of these planets. People do crazy things on the night of the moon, and they do crazy things when Mars goes into Taurus, believe me. Okay? But you do have the above help of meditation, finding the light. That's very important. Eating right, sleeping, prayer, super healthy and important to tell what you want out loud in words. And excuse me. and also fasting, abstaining from things, cutting out the excess, because Mars and Saturn, they like excess. Okay, so cut out the excess, and that'll help you fight the overwhelming powers of Mars. That's probably one of the most important things is fasting. That's probably one of the most important things. Just start. I'm not talking about stop eating and become a breatharian, but cut back on everything, and you'll see a difference. Watch your job, of course, how you deal with your boss, the job, you don't want to, and your children. This is super important. Watch how you deal with the kids. The kids are going to be crazy. Okay, the kids are going to be very insane in the next couple months. Again, this is not for everyone. This is for a majority of people. I wouldn't even say the vast majority. The other half is either going to notice it or they're not going to notice it. And then there's going to be a small portion that's going to be really affected by this, really affected. And some signs, Mars is going to be in certain, we didn't talk about the houses. And the houses are positions in the sky where the planet will be for certain signs. So certain signs are, I think there's a couple of signs that are not going to be negatively affected at all. 2, 3 of them at max. But for the majority of signs, this is going to be a tough winter. Mars is going into Taurus. It is in retrograde. You're going to have to rise, okay? And so that is basically what we're going to present tonight. Remember, it's October 31st, 2022. Mars is retrograding on November 15th. Mars will be in Taurus and in a serious decline, sending a lot of, let's say, suspicious. Can we say that? Mars is going to be sending suspicious packages in the form of protons and molecules. You know, I always want to thank you guys for joining me here at Sevenaria University. Sevenaria is committed to bringing you truth and facts as I can gather, and presenting that to you in an honest way. If I've made any mistakes here on this program, it was all done live in one take, without a script. I use PowerPoints that I've written, okay? So I literally write these notes and I bring them to you. So I'm going to be doing more on Mars in the future, more on the planet's effects on us in the future, more on the constellations' effects on us, because the effects of the constellations on us, because in realistic terms, we are magnetic light creatures, and these things are having an effect on us. We need to understand that. We need to come away from naked base religion and get more into what the effect of the creation of the God is on us. You know, the tools were left here. The God left the tool here. The tools are what we see, the creation, what we're standing on and what is around us. We need to leave off the bare essence worship and get more into understanding what the creation does for us and the powers, the drawbacks and benefits of all of this. So for Sevenaria University, I'm Israel Joseph. I'm the founder, dean, director, and professor here at the university. Some stuff coming up. Of course, I've got more planned programs. Got one on the age of Aquarius coming up. There's another one on what happens after we die. And a few others coming up. So I want to thank you guys again. It's always awesome doing this, and I'm going to do another one real soon. Take care of yourself. Peace and love. Blessings to you all.